Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigeland Network show. My name is Emma Vigeland, and you know what to do. Like this stream, subscribe, comment below. If you're watching this after it's aired, rate us 5 stars on Apple and Spotify and all the podcast platforms. We are back. I am 70% over the flu. 80, maybe I'll go with 80%. 80%. Bradley is back from his trip, and we're here to provide you with content.
Hello, governor.
We're so sorry. Like, really was supposed to do something with Matt on Monday, where we were going to preview the NBA season. But, oh my God, was I as sick as I've been in like a year? I guess COVID. The first time I got COVID was probably the sickest I've maybe ever been. I've had the stomach flu before. That was pretty bad. But that first time I had COVID, it lasted like all 10 days. Sickness the entire time.
I think the sickest I was actually a week ago.
Well, you were when you were
I
away.
had food poisoning. I had food poisoning in Paris.
Yeah, so I guess like you were not immune to the sickness bug.
The ESVN bug.
I mean, everybody here is getting kind of sick right now. I'm not sure what it is. In part, I think it's because the gym that I go to has little kids where there's like a daycare there, and I see them around and I'm like, I know that you're just a walking petri dish.
Absolutely. All the kids in that age too, like toddlers.
Yes.
And
lots of them at this gym. It's a family-friendly gym. I like that about it. But I'm quite convinced that was the source of my flu. So I was running a fever for like 3 days.
That's not good.
It was awful. And I couldn't even enjoy football in the same way, although it did like distract me from the Giants losing to the Eagles in Saquon Barkley's return home. Like, I basically just compartmentalized that and put it out of my mind. But welcome back, Bradley. So good to have you. So good to be back with you.
Good to be back.
We are going to just do a quick rundown of the news since this is ESVN OT, but we will be back with our normal show on Monday.
Anything notable? Since I've been gone?
Lots, actually. I mean, we've had a million trades in the NFL. We'll get to that in a second. Let's just briefly talk about the World Series. I mean, look, the Mets' magical run did come to an end. Unfortunately, the Dodgers are what we thought they were, in the words of, who was that coach?
Dennis Green.
Yes. The Bears are who we thought they were. The Dodgers are incredibly talented, have the best player on the planet, and they are about to face off against the Yankees in a very classic matchup, Yankees-Dodgers.
Yeah, it's obviously a little bit dispiriting to know that, you know, the Mets were one series away from going to the World Series for the first time in 9 years, and instead the other New York baseball team will be in the World Series against the team that moved away from New York to become the Los Angeles Dodgers.
Much to Bernie Sanders' dismay, I believe.
Much of the poetry of that is not lost on me. However, I'm, you know, even a month ago or a month and a half ago, this run for the Mets to the NLCS was basically seemed either impossible or extremely unlikely. So for them to get even remotely as far as they did, only to get stopped by like the wood chipper that is the Dodgers, just because, I mean, that the two teams, in my view, some people don't agree with this who watch baseball, but I actually prefer that the two teams with two of, if not the two largest payrolls in the entire league are the ones in the World Series, because it means that there were two ownership groups and two front offices that actually cared about spending money to make their teams good and fun to watch and entertaining.
Yeah.
So instead of watching, you know, nothing against a team like the Rays, who have been very good, but basically have tried to, you know, manipulate as much of their salary as they can to basically have a payroll that's 30 times less than the Yankees. To have an interesting baseball team, but one that pays their players significantly less than these teams do. Instead, we get, you know, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani, you know, Max Muncy against frickin' Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, Garrett Cole. Like, it's it's a star-studded matchup between two of the teams that have spent the most to have some of the best players in the entire league on their teams in two of the biggest markets. So it's just going to be fun to have a little bit of showtime in the World Series, and especially for the Dodgers to return after what a lot of people consider, their 2020 World Series was one that was
Fake one.
That was won in a completely abbreviated season with no fans in the stands.
I'm sorry, I don't count those. I don't count the Lakers. I don't really count the Dodgers, and I don't count the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't count Tom Brady's final ring. Just kidding. I'm sort of kidding.
But it's hard. But it's especially hard with like the bubble and this, and I think the MLB World Series, because with the MLB World Series they played 100 less games, and so much of the, so much of what makes these championship series or games what they are is the variable that is like a rabid, fan base, a live crowd, like makes it so that these things are much more, of a live wire than it was with, the 2020 series. So I'm happy at least that the Dodgers can actually get that taste of it with a real environment.
Me too.
Credit to the Yankees. As much as we see the Yankees as this, Voltron cyborg organization, they haven't been to the World Series since 2009. So this is actually for a team that is as storied and as winning as the Yankees are. This is a pretty long drought for them. So it'll be exciting to see. I still give the Dodgers the edge just because honestly, like
the star power. And Cole, to your point, has not been pitching in the way that I think that he would like.
The pitching I think on the Yankees is not as.
The Guardians were not the cream of the crop,
and yet they still they played them pretty closely. I mean, in those 5 games, I mean, there's two walk-offs to kind of keep the Guardians in the series, but like I think pitching is probably the most difficult area for both teams. One of the one Mets win that they had was basically because the Mets were able to knock around Jack Flaherty until he got taken out of the game. But
well, they won twice, but yeah, you mean the one where they split in LA?
Exactly.
Yeah, that was the bullpen day. And then when the Mets lost 2 in New York, it was like, okay.
Right.
It was kind of like a slow bleed out by that point. I'm kind of grateful that it didn't go to 7.
And I think it also just goes to show you that, especially in terms of like the real big strength for the Dodgers is just, I mean, this lineup is like they scored like at least 7 or 8 runs in all of the games that they won.
Yeah.
And against a lineup that was hitting pretty well for the Mets, they were and also in hitting in the clutch pretty well. So I think the Yankees have their work cut out for him, but I also think, if Juan Soto can continue to do Juan Soto things in the sense of hitting home runs or clutch hits in the most opportune moments imaginable, if Giancarlo Stanton can continue to be literally like
the clutchest player ever,
he's a guy who like basically every regular season Yankees fans are like, why do we employ this guy? And then anytime they have a big postseason run, it's because of him basically.
Stanton is Eli Manning,
right? It's like a guy who like you see in the regular season, you're like, oh, I don't really. He basically either strikes out or hits homers, but then this last
leads
series,
the league in interceptions.
Yeah,
it's actually kind of a decent comparison.
This last series, I think, and I think I was reading a stat, one of the few games. Either I can't remember if it was the full series or kind of the series up to this certain point. Stanton was like 4 for 27 or something in at bats, and the 4 of them were home runs.
Yeah.
And they were like the clutch home runs to basically either put them ahead or win the game for them.
It's amazing because obviously Judge has not had the postseason that he wanted, but he seemed to get going towards the end of that series. Maybe he can carry that into the Dodgers one. So. And then
right, and any sort of real pickup from Judge will be, because there at some point some of the Guardians pitchers were freaking, walking Juan Soto to pitch to Judge, which is like such an affront because obviously Judge is such an incredible player, but he's been really slumping.
In terms of the NLCS and the ALCS, those three of the teams in those final 4 were the 3 top payroll teams, I believe, in Major League Baseball. The Guardians are at the bottom. Like the Guardians are at the bottom, and so they were the outlier in that regard. But I think the people thought the Yankees would make quick work of them, and they did that kind of relatively easily. But I think the Dodgers have to be, at least for me, the betting favorite
I
going
agree.
into this series. Like, I think Dodgers in 6, even though I am rooting for the Yankees because I have a Yankees fan in my home. It's the one team that we differ on, and I'm not that committed of a Mets fan, so it's fine. But like, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be rooting for the Yankees in that regard.
The Dodgers also, I honestly think just by virtue, we can, all of these different kind of, different kind of subtleties and things to discuss with the series. I really think, honestly, you just do have to sort of give them the edge because Shohei Ohtani
Exactly.
Just by virtue of him just being there.
I mean, they are an incredibly well-rounded team. They are incredibly well-rounded. They can hit, they can pitch, they can play defense. I mean, and I think that the Yankees are a little bit more boom or bust, and some of their starting pitching has been shaky.
Yeah.
So they can potentially get hot at the right time. And I think the series is more even than gosh, this camera's so annoying. More even. I don't know how to fix it. More even than maybe, I don't know. Definitely more even than if they were going to be playing the Mets, the Yankees. I mean. Or if the Dodgers were playing the Guardians.
Yeah.
Like, it ended up being the two best teams
Kind of like the two, the most explosive. So it'll be exciting to watch.
Right. Let's also just touch on, because today the parade must have finished by now. The parade for the Liberty ended. It was in Lower Manhattan. So today they had their victory parade.
Yes, baby. Championships come back to New York. Let's go.
I mean, look, I remember going to see the Liberty with my dad back when they were at Madison Square Garden. Then they kind of bounced around to Radio City Music Hall, and now they're officially
in
at
White Plains
Barclays.
for a bit.
Yeah.
Before the Psy family bought them from James Dolan.
But they're at Barclays now, and that is where they have finally won their first WNBA championship in the entirety of their 27 years on this planet. They defeated the Minnesota Lynx in overtime in Game 5 of a 5-game series. So it was a real nail-biter. And their best players were not playing well in that game. Sabrina Ionescu and Brianna Stewart, who was already a 2-time champion before this, now a 3-time champion with Seattle, they were struggling on offense basically the entire game. So the finals MVP was Jonquel Jones, and she scored 17 points. They made their way down. I think they went down from City Hall to Wall Street. I've done that walk. That's a very frequent walled off air. Like that was the like Friday when Greta Thunberg came to the city and did whatever. That's where they blocked off those climate change protests and all that kind of thing. So I want to see some images of that, but it looks pretty rockin'.
Yeah, I think Chuck Schumer was there up on a float with his Liberty gear.
Oh, he was.
Yeah, anywhere with a camera, that guy'll be.
Oh yeah.
No, it's an amazing thing, especially because they were also going up against the Lynx team that has won, I believe, 4 titles in its history.
Wow.
So like, and honestly, probably outside of like the Aces, potentially the most well-rounded team in the W in terms of like being the kind of. I think those were sort of the 3 teams to sort of be the biggest contenders for a title. The 2 teams that were in the finals last year, and the Aces and the Liberty, and then the Lynx.
Right.
Based off of mostly
The Connecticut Sun had their day in the sun.
They did have their day in the sun.
But yes, go on.
But the play of Nafisa Collier, who is a one defensive player of the year over Aja Wilson, and also was a down ballot MVP candidate, rightfully so, kind of leading the charge on this Lynx team. It was a really obviously, as evidenced by Game 5 going into overtime, a really, really close series that had some ups and downs for both teams in terms of shooting luck and
officiating.
And the officiating definitely was a bit of a hot button to end this Game 5 for sure.
There were some issues with officiating, I think, on home court. Like, the Liberty were screwed in Game 4 in Minnesota, I think, by a lot of people saying like they were getting a lot of whistles and the Lynx weren't. And then the Lynx were complaining because the same thing happened when they came back to Brooklyn for Game 5. But I think at the end of the day, the Liberty were the more talented team. They've been one of the most talented teams in the WNBA for quite some time. And they were able to overcome even poor performances by their star players on offense to close out this championship. So what's also exciting, and I guess we didn't even put this into the title, but after this victory, the WNBA players have decided to opt out of the CBA and are going to renegotiate their contracts with the league going into the next year, which is sorely needed, very important. And I mean, given the explosion of popularity of women's basketball, in part due to the Caitlin Clark effect, but also the wonderful other talented players that have made it into the league, and just the evolution in skill in the game, like the more that more investment goes into sports, the more skillful the players become, right? Like there's more resources for kids to start earlier, young girls that may be interested in this kind of thing, for them to be able to go to camps and for those to be well funded and for these school programs to have attendance. It just, a rising tide in this area lifts all boats. And so, you know, Caitlin Clark, that effect, whatever you want to pin it to, and I think it's undeniable that her the following that she has elevated the sport. But it's a great opportunity for all of the players to be able to cash in at this point. And so you don't have to have a situation where, like, what was the name of that player who played for France in the in women's basketball?
Gabby Williams.
Gabby Williams, who was in the WNBA, but then took a bigger contract to play abroad, and she's, I guess, back now.
Yes, I believe she's back now. Yeah,
right.
She was in the postseason.
But I mean, it makes total sense that like the WNBA was not able to, I think, maintain the talent that they could, because of their low payroll, basically. And so,
no, sorry, but I think So I think she's playing in Turkey now, basically. But I think while in the W, she's in the during the WNBA season, she's with the Storm. But I think it's such a round the clock thing still for WNBA athletes.
Either way,
they very rarely have a long off season. Right?
I saw that Caitlin Clark is going to be taking the opportunity to play somewhere else in the off season too, because it's a paycheck. That shouldn't have to be the case. It should be like NBA players in that regard. So,
and hopefully the expansion is a bit of more
necessary,
robust too, just to make it so that there's maybe more, not like league parity, but also just more options for players to go to and stuff.
More
like
revenue
that. And more negotiating power in terms of having more places to kind of more bidding power for these players to have actually to say, hey, I'm getting an offer from here, what can you offer me, that type of thing.
Exactly. So that's that. Congratulations to the Liberty here in our hometown of New York. All right, now there's some NFL news before our picks. DeAndre Hopkins has been traded to the Chiefs. At least they've agreed to do so. Now, that is basically code for the Titans saying, okay, anybody else who wants to up the Chiefs' offer, we have agreed to trade him to the Chiefs for this amount. But it's more than likely that no one will do so because this is a very telegraphed move that a lot of front offices do. 5-time Pro Bowl wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins from the Titans to the Chiefs.
Boy, do the Chiefs need it.
D-Hop,
anything. Literally
D-Hop
anything.
is very similar to Rashee Rice in the sense where he can live in the slot. He's a possession receiver.
Good hands.
The loss of Rashee Rice just killed them on offense. And it's amazing.
Hollywood Brown as well. They're just not even having the option after acquiring him in the offseason. So, yeah.
I mean, I appreciate what the Chiefs are doing, or what they thought they were doing with the Xavier Worthy pick, and he has value. But they need a wide receiver one. I mean, this is agonizing. And the fact that they're undefeated right now is just like Spags is auditioning to be a head coach next year, because the way
that's mostly where it's coming from, right?
It's the entire defense, right? They have the best defense in the NFL.
Right.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes is by far having his worst year as a pro, and it's not even close.
No, and this is a pretty.
I still think he's the greatest of all time.
But this is a pretty, and listen, good.
People forget that Brady had really down
years.
That's
just what I was going to say. Is like good to great quarterbacks have down stretches. Like, it's not something that's completely alien, but I think it's worth mentioning that he is really struggling this season.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's just crazy because people forget and just blank out all of those years between the the spurts where the Patriots won 3 Super Bowls at the start of his career.
There was a fallow period.
And then there was that long period that included the nearly undefeated season where the Giants beat them in the 07-08 season with Randy Moss. That was when Brady was kind of slumping. And then prior to when was Jimmy Garoppolo drafted? That was when there were real conversations of like, will they move on from Brady?
Like 27, maybe 2017, 20. Maybe I'm trying
No,
to,
it was before that.
It was maybe before that.
I mean, I really think it was more like 2014 or
okay,
something.
maybe it
to
was.
that.
Yeah.
And then Brady was like, hell no, he locked in, and
Yeah.
that was when he ended up going on that run where they won the Atlanta Falcons Super Bowl.
And then against the Rams.
And
Well, they lost to the Eagles, so I guess was the Nick Foles year.
Yes, but there was another win that they had in there, and I'm forgetting who. Oh, the Seattle Seahawks with when Russell Wilson threw.
Oh,
the ball
yes, the Malcolm Butler interception. Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
And then they did also lose to the Eagles and the Giants again during that period.
Right, so like 2011.
The dude's been to 10 Super Bowls.
That was basically right. 2011.
And he won 7 of them.
Right, 2011, probably the start with the Giants Super Bowl, ending with the 2019, the Rams.
Yes.
Really low scoring slog.
And then he won his
Super Bowl
7th in the pandemic year with the Bucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, that's the problem is just that I also think the other underreported element of this is they really miss Eric Bieniemy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a persistent problem since Bieniemy left last year. Mahomes is unbelievably clutch in the postseason, but he still struggled offensively. Who is the offensive coordinator? Oh, I don't know. It's Matt Nagy. I also think, look, I've said this before, and I know that this sounds like a stupid Colin Cowherd take, but I really believe it to be true. Travis Kelce is partying all the time on the weekends. He's 35 years old. He looks 10 pounds too heavy, and drinking and having a good time can do that to you. Mahomes is always with him. Like, do I think that they're sleepwalking a little through the regular season? Fuck yeah, I do. I do. I think they
and
frankly they know that they can.
And I think
they're undefeated.
And I think that's sort of what I'm taking from that too, in the sense of knowing that they can. Like, it does remind me of some of the more of like, it reminds me of some of the heyday / kind of the last championship year of the Warriors dynasty, where it was like, you know, I remember countless regular season games where I was like, oh, like the Warriors would be like inexplicably losing by like 19 points to like a middling regular season opponent. Then in like the last 5 minutes of the game in the fourth quarter, Steph Curry would be like, all right, we might as well win this game.
Right.
Like,
that's
like
exactly
dropping
what it's like.
20 points in the fourth quarter, like going 8 for 8 from 3 and then winning by 8 or something like that. And then winning a title after all that, people being like, oh, is this the year? Is Steph Curry cooked?
Right.
And it's like, no, I think they probably also realize we can probably take a load off a little bit, knowing that what we're actually playing for, one, is the playoffs, and two, it's not as if their division is the NFC North.
No.
Their division is the Chargers, the Raiders, and the Broncos. It's not there not many people nipping at their heels that much as
But
divisions.
that was also the secret to the dynasty for the Patriots. What the hell was happening in that division? The one time they had a run for their money was those few years when the Jets were good under Rex Ryan.
Yep.
The Bills were a shit show the entire time until Josh Allen came along.
And same goes with the Dolphins too.
I mean, the Dolphins were it was Joe Philbin and frickin' Adam Gase.
It was really, honestly, I think the most competitive, I think, interdivisionally was, as you were saying, the Mark Sanchez Jets. Like the 2009, 2010 Jets.
Yeah, and that was then the Jets lost in the AFC Championship that year, but didn't they beat the Patriots to start that run?
Yes, it was the year they beat the Patriots and then lost to the Steelers, and the Steelers won the Super Bowl.
The secret to both the Pats and then the Chiefs dynasty, and you can call them again the dynasty at this point, they already have 3 rings. They're trying to go for 3 in a row this year. Is the fact that they have weak divisions, because it's really pretty easy. And the Chiefs, they disproved it last year by being the 3 seed, and then they went on the road and defeated Baltimore. But for the most part, it's a lot easier if you can just have the whole conference postseason period go through your home stadium.
So and the thing is, I say all of this not even saying I'm really concerned. I'm really not concerned until they lose in the playoffs, honestly, with the Chiefs. And we're also talking about this team. We're also talking about this team in the context of the fact that also they are literally still undefeated.
Yeah, they're undefeated. It's ridiculous. They are the find a way to win squad. And so DeAndre Hopkins, look, at 32, he doesn't have that kind of explosiveness, but Mahomes can fit it in there pretty easily. And he
usually, I will say, he finds a way, even with these guys who are not particularly highly touted, to kind of like make it work. Like, honestly, Marquez Valdes-Scantling had some of the best years of his career with Mahomes. Kadarius Toney and Kadarius Toney and McCall.
Well, I was about to bring up to Kadarius Toney because, like, look, he's more of an athletic freak as opposed to Hopkins, who's a route runner. But they both are character problems a little bit, like issues with practicing, and the Chiefs have shown that they can make it work with those kinds of renegades for the most part until they get into a car and maybe
or like play too much COD,
almost kill someone. Yeah.
And the other thing too is like not even just make them work. It's also like to be and also somehow make them like inexplicably like X factors in the biggest games of their season. Like the fact that both Sky Moore and McCole Hardman and Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney both in the Eagles Super Bowl had two of the most impactful touchdowns. Then McCole Hardman, who was basically cast off by the Jets, having the game-winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. It's like Mahomes just knows how to make it work with basically anybody who's going to suit up and run a route.
For the most part, I mean,
this has been the toughest year to even see this.
And honestly, definitely. I wouldn't even put it past them to win the Super Bowl without trading for DeAndre Hopkins because of the force of his like clutchness in the playoffs. But this gives them some,
breathing room.
Breathing room, and we'll see how this fit works. The other big trade, which I was really happy to see because I've been begging the frickin' Bills to do something about receiver, was Amari Cooper going to the Buffalo Bills. Great fit.
Love this. Yeah, I think this is a great
the opposite
acquisition
of Stephon Diggs in terms of somebody who's going to cause an issue. Amari Cooper is almost too soft-spoken and lacking in fire, but you're not going to have an issue with Josh Allen being the quarterback behind you. Amari Cooper,
and he's almost underrated, I think, just in the sense of like who he's had to play with and still being as productive as he's been.
And I think it's easy for you to get a little bit disenchanted if you're not really chasing a ring in that way.
He's toiling on this team. I feel especially now after the Deshaun Watson injury. Now with Jameis, which frankly may have been honestly a blessing in disguise for this Cleveland team to have an actual tangible reason beyond this guy sucks so much and we're paying him so much money we have to keep starting him to actually not have to play him. But I do feel for I'm glad that Cooper was able to get out, but I do feel for like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, these like really solid, Nick Chubb coming back from his injury. I feel for these guys who are like, until now, we'll obviously see what happens with Jameis Winston behind center, but kind of playing for nothing.
Yeah.
Kind of playing to basically...
When they were in the playoffs last year.
Kind of basically playing to absolve Jimmy Haslam, the payday lender king of Cleveland, to mask his completely and utterly disgraceful and embarrassing acquisition of Deshaun Watson.
Right. That's exactly right. And then who was the third wide receiver that was traded? Gosh, what is wrong with me?
What was his name? He played at Fresno State, I think, with Derek Carr.
Oh, fuck. See, this is how little it matters. The 2-5 Jets traded for Devante Adams.
The 2-5 Jets, with the difference between them and the team last year is that Zach Wilson was the quarterback and they had a better record.
Yeah, they did. They
were 4-3.
Zach Wilson redeemed. Remember my whole ballywick about that?
Yeah, so I just think Roger Sherman, who used to be at The Ringer, has a funny YouTube channel last year called Road Raj, one of my favorite Twitter followers. Twitter follows. He's also a Jets fan, and he tweeted something basically like, "This is it, guys. One more Aaron Rodgers friend that we add to the mix, and this is going to fix it.
One more friend, bro. Just one more
We just
friend.
need one more Aaron Rodgers associate, and we're going to totally turn this around." And we had to pick the most ornery prima donna to match the other ornery prima donna. He was there. I'm not trying. Listen, I'm really not trying to bag too much on a player who got like Devante Adams is a great player. I'm not trying to throw stones so quickly. He was in the locker room talking so somberly as if he's been on the team since preseason. He was like, "This is just what happens with this team. We make costly mistakes." I'm like, "Bro, you were in Las Vegas a week ago.
Yeah.
What do you mean?"
Yeah, I know. Why are you speaking for it? But the problem is like, so again, big fan of Chris Sims. I listened to his Wednesday podcast for some of his like breakdowns of the game, and he was infuriated watching the Jets film. He was saying that Aaron Rodgers thinks he's smarter than ever. First of all, Sims was the guy that got me into Aaron Rodgers as like one of the greatest players he's ever seen.
I think it's almost more infuriating because of that fact.
Yeah. And I agree with that. But his perception and his take is that when he looks at the film, he feels that I think he literally thinks this from his ayahuasca stuff, that he sees the field more clearly, that he's more enlightened. Like, I'm not even joking. And that
I wouldn't put it past him.
He predetermines the play. And so Sims was essentially saying, like, you're not smarter than everybody else. Actually do the work of reading the play pre-snap, because you can see he just doesn't throw it when Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson are the most open guys on that team. But he needs his little safe space, his friends, one more Aaron Rodgers friend, and he forces the ball to them and predetermines it before you don't know how to meld your mind to change the coverage in the way that you want before the snap, dude. Throw it to the open guy. Like, his ego is out of control.
But I mentioned this, I think, when they played the Vikings, is that it was brought up. I think it was either, I can't remember which, it was either one of the halftime shows. It might have been Sims, honestly, who said this. I'm just trying to remember who I was watching.
Yeah.
For one of the other games, not like they were recapping the Jets Vikings games, because I think that was the London game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Every team, if you watch Jets film enough, you basically see Rodgers tells, because they're so unbelievably transparent, and they don't change, because the system itself that is crafted by him and Austin Powers watcher Nathaniel Hackett is the same product every week. He goes. There was the pass that I think either led to the Andrew Van Ginkel pick six a few weeks ago by the Vikings.
Yeah,
was Rodgers assesses the coverage, points at two guys, and does this basically. So slants.
Yeah.
Van Ginkel's like, oh, he's doing slants. So maybe you would think that the guy, seeing that you're doing slants, would say, you would think to yourself, oh, he's seeing that I'm doing slants, I should do something else. No, Rodgers just snaps the ball, does slants, Van Ginkel stays in the flat and just picks off the easiest interception imaginable, because nothing changes about this offense. It's the same thing every week.
And what's frustrating is he still throws a beautiful, beautiful ball. Like, if he took his ego out of it and he didn't think that he was smarter than everybody else, and that he knows what's best and where to throw it before the ball is snapped, before really even having to read.
If he decided to be a teamate,
yeah,
like if he decided to be a member of the team,
that's the problem. And that's the thing is like, honestly, self-evaluating I've said this before, where I don't get things right is when I get enamored with guys' like physical abilities, and sometimes I miss some of those more nuances, like being a smart reader of defenses, or one that's egoless. Like, Rodgers is smart, right? I mean, in that sense, but it's not like he is.
I actually wish he was dumber.
He doesn't have the intangibles to know, like, he's at this point in his career, his head is so big and filled with fucking psychedelics. Like when Tony Soprano did that psychedelic trip after killing somebody. I won't say who it is, not to spoil, but someone important.
It was 20 years ago.
I'm not going to say. I didn't know that was going to happen. I knew.
It's 25 years.
I knew the famous one with my girl, but not what happened.
It's 25 years. I think the statute of limitations.
Okay, whatever. It doesn't really matter. When he goes to Las Vegas and he does acid.
I remember.
Like, it doesn't change. Tony doesn't reflect on what he just did, killing that person who was incredibly close to him.
Because the trip is about himself.
The trip is about his ego.
It's not about reflecting to be a better person. It's about reflecting to reflect more on me.
That is something I find so profound about that show, is like, is therapy and therapy for narcissists isn't helpful. That is what they end up determining.
Because you're looking at a mirror.
Because it ends up just convincing guys who are already narcissistic, or sometimes women, of their own bullshit. And externalizing, it's everyone else's problem, right? And these are, I think, the limits of therapy. And that's how I feel about Aaron Rodgers with his ayahuasca trip. Like, he thinks he's more enlightened, but he just became more convinced of his own bullshit.
But that's also kind of where I think the pseudoscience stuff comes from with him. Just as a broader critique, also just him as a person, is that I think all of this is sort of like Oh, you respect established facts? That could never be me, bro. You're an idiot.
Right.
Open up your mind to stuff that's not actually real.
Exactly.
Because it actually doesn't affect me whether I say it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's
I never have to deal with the implications of my actions. I always just basically get gifted a microphone with a blank check to go on Pat McAfee. So like, you're actually the dumb one.
But like, does he watch the film and see that he's like Breece Hall is wide open, but he's forcing it into the back of the end zone to Mike Williams because he's already predetermined the throw, even though there's two guys back there and a safety that could make that interception?
But I think the response is always, some way, Breece or Mike could be doing something better.
But this is the thing that I returned back to with him. I'm so sick of seeing how tense, and I'm sure you are as a Jets fan, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, the guys who weren't in the club before are when they step out onto the field, because I really like Garrett Wilson. I think he's a smart, thoughtful player that tries to do the right thing.
He's a guy who had multiple 1,000-yard seasons with getting thrown to by Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson.
And Breece Hall is a freaking star. And those guys look like they're miserable playing with Aaron Rodgers. You know why? Because nothing they do is good enough for him. Because he puts so much on the damn receiver. And the guys that he likes, like Alan Lazard or Devante Adams, they'll get a pass. But
Mike Williams does. And as a similar thing, offseason acquisition, Mike Williams, he got blamed for the interception. He said he didn't turn around fast enough.
Yeah, and it was not his fault. It was a bad throw. Rodgers blamed him in the postseason. I mean, in the post-game press conference.
Yeah, right. And they had a private meeting about it. To say, hey, you got to keep covering for me.
It's just toxic. Like,
it's horrible,
and it's horrible for the confidence of these players, this incredibly talented young team on offense. Where I want to be like, Garrett Wilson, you're not doing anything wrong, bro. You're running your routes great. I see you open, and he's not throwing it to you.
And also, even beyond the route running, it's like, this offense also doesn't do anything to make anything easier for anybody playing.
I know.
They don't really chip help. They don't really go into heavy personnel to kind of stack the box for runs. They don't. There's no motion.
Yeah.
There's no motion.
Yeah.
There's literally barely any motion. How can you be an offense in the 2024 in the year of our Lord?
And for
with
all
no
of
motion?
This talk about love and I love you, man. I love you. That's what he says to all his teammates. Like, he is such a freaking favoritist dude.
It's phony. It's artificial.
So
it's
phony.
Not real. Like,
I know. Anyway, I just feel for those young guys because they are not doing anything wrong. Their quarterback is there's no coach to keep him in line. And he's putting way too much pressure on these receivers that don't deserve it.
But listen, I think we're going to turn it around. We'll probably sign, I don't know, David Bakhtiari, maybe. We'll probably sign Jordy Nelson. I think he'll help.
Yeah.
Donald Driver. James Jones, maybe.
Maybe
we'll get Mercedes Lewis on the squad.
Yeah, we need Mercedes. We need a
Jermichael Finley.
Veteran presence.
Jermichael Finley will probably get back as well, hopefully.
Hey, can we put Clay
Matthews, maybe.
I was about to say Clay Higgins. Who's a Republican congressman. Can we put Clay Matthews at tight end?
Yeah, maybe Clay Matthews can come on.
Tim Tebow him.
Yeah, a wildcat with Clay Matthews.
All right.
It's fine. We'll figure it out.
I also want to say I really feel for Chris Godwin. There's no reason he should have been out there at the end of that game. I think that was shitty.
I know, with so little time left to
as a free agent. I mean,
and then also Mike Evans, I think
Mike Evans
has a little bit
pulled
of
his hamstring. We'll see if the Bucs can survive, because I think if Mike Evans comes back,
is Godwin out for the season?
Godwin is. Did you not see that his ankle went the opposite direction than it should be going? It was completely turned around.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's out for the season.
Yeah, he's out for the season.
He dislocated his ankle.
He was playing really well. Oh, that's horrible.
Dislocating your ankle, oh man, that is rough. So Shabari writes in, BJ Raji return game.
Yep, definitely getting BJ Raji back for sure.
I haven't heard the name BJ Raji.
Definitely getting BJ Raji back, 100%.
Last NFL news thing, and then we'll get to our picks. Let's play this from Tua. So Tua Tagovailoa is returning to play in the NFL. This is his fourth documented concussion. We don't know how many other concussions he's had that have gone unreported. Based on how last year went when he did the fencing posture and they tried to, play it off as a back injury until they got a bunch of blowback, I would not be shocked if it's significantly more. We don't know how many he got in high school. We don't know how many he got in college. And I bring this up because of how he responded to reporters. Here is his defiant response when asked about potentially retiring for his long-term health and the prospect of wearing the incredibly uncool Guardian helmet.
For you, or I don't know how much attention you pay to it when so many people in the outside world are saying he should retire, you don't play this and that, while you're symptom free the next day.
I wasn't paying attention to any of it. None of it.
Tua, you said last time you had that discussion.
Yeah.
In the offseason.
Mhm.
Did that discussion come up in the last?
Nope. Nope. None of that.
Will you wear a Guardian cap?
Nope.
Why?
Personal choice.
Are you, will this change your style of play, your decision to scramble or run or things like that?
It's got to be smart. That's it.
Yeah. So
I think that's the problem, though, is that like I feel like
he wasn't smart. He was supposedly doing jujitsu in the off season and was supposed to learn how to fall. Dude, you ran, you jumped headfirst into DeMar Hamlin's body, and that's what caused this fourth concussion.
it always makes me nervous because I feel like I've noticed, and like the thing is, I absolutely don't want to like blame somebody for the concussions that they've experienced, but like I feel like some guys are better than others in football of like kind of protecting their head when they fall. And the thing is, I always feel like Tua, when in these concussions, he kind of like his body falls before his head, so it always feels like his head is receiving the largest amount of the impact. Like his head falls last, so it like smashes into the field, which is just so jarring to watch.
Well, he's not
witness.
a big guy, is part of the problem. But you know who's not big, and we've criticized his play for many reasons, is Bryce Young. We were just talking about Bryce Hall. Bryce Young. I think he goes down more smartly than Tua does. But I mean, it shows it's not effective. This is why I wouldn't draft a quarterback of that size for that reason. But I just gotta say, like, look, it's his body and his choice and all that kind of stuff. But this is where the NFL has to step in. I've heard rumblings that the NFLPA has told him to consider retirement, and they feel like they're in a tough position because, look, he has tens of millions of dollars on the table in front of him. And for a guy to turn that down, it's just, unless he's forced to, it's very hard for him to do that. That's why the incentive structure is so wrong. And so if you were going to make $75 million or whatever, $80 million that he's set to make over the next few seasons for playing, could you, if you were like a young athlete with a lot of competitiveness and testosterone and all that kind of stuff that goes into being a football player where you have to be reckless by design, can you honestly say that you would turn that down? I don't know if you can honestly say that you would if it was left to you, which is why it shouldn't be left up to him. It should also not be left up to him if he wants to look cool on the field by wearing a Guardian helmet or not. I don't care. I don't care if it reduces the likelihood of him having long-term effects by just 5%. He should be mandated to wear that damn Guardian cap. It's insane that he said no. Like, this is where, I'm concerned for his health, but this is where I also just have a problem with him personally. I mean, I'm not shocked to see that his wife is a big Trump supporter because he's extremely religious, and it causes him to have these he just he doesn't seem to think about the consequences. Let go and let God. Okay, buddy, but you're letting go of your brain functionality right now.
And I also just think it like,
wear the damn Guardian cap. Why?
But I think that's a systemic thing, though, in the sense that I think there's a lot of headwinds that make it so that players are really, really resistant to anything that changes their routine or anything that complicates or even factors in the idea that what they're doing is dangerous.
I know.
I think they almost see. I think they only see it as a pejorative to even consider football as a dangerous sport.
Well, and
or to even see something as pejorative in terms of thinking as if there needs to be things to mitigate the danger of the sport.
Well, it would make him like lacking in masculinity or lacking in toughness or something into that regard. I mean, there's a reason that the league trends more conservative in that way. It's more Southern, it's more religious, it's more traditionally masculine. It's that kind of garbage. But the reality is that the league has to worry about the long-term effects of this. I think both the Players Association and the league should be rightly concerned about him dying or getting paralyzed on the field. Like, I'm not joking about that.
No, you're right.
That's why they need to, just from a legal perspective, take precautions to mandate that. There's nothing that they can do. He knows all the risks. And it's hard for me to be like, okay, I care about your brain if you don't care about it yourself or whatever. Like, what am I supposed to say? He doesn't seem to care. He has a wife and kids. Okay. I can't judge that from the outside. But I can judge the league allowing it to happen. This is the kind of thing where, like, you got to mandate a guardian cap after a certain number of concussions. It just has to happen. And I don't care if he thinks it makes him look like a pussy. The reality of the situation is that he's had 4 concussions that are documented. And it's not like, at one point in this press conference, he was like, everybody takes risk getting out of bed in the morning, driving in the car to work. It's like... yes, we all exist in the world, and sometimes accidents happen in the world. The difference is that all of us aren't going and playing a violent sport where we know that if you've had 1 concussion, you're more likely to get a second concussion. If you've had a second concussion, you're even more likely to get a third. He's now had 4 documented concussions. He will get 1 more concussion, another concussion after that. As long as he keeps playing, he will keep getting concussions because that's how that science works. He is going to keep making his brain basically bleed and bruising it the more he continues to play. It's not like these are isolated, siloed incidents. I don't know what doctor is telling him this or if he's just kind of dumb, but that's not how it works. It's not about a car accident. It would be like if you got into a car accident as a NASCAR driver and you weren't allowed to fix your flat tire on the left passenger side.
And then said, I'm gonna go drive.
And you got to go drive.
Yeah.
And then your left tire falls off and you got to keep going drive. Like, that's what it would be analogous to. And so it's just like, I don't know what to say to this guy. I don't know what to say to him.
I also, not to psychoanalyze him too much, but I think there is something to be said about the combination of his faith level, the belief, the kind of belief.
He's very religious.
If there's something about sort of like, say, either some sort of predeterminants or something about like there being a higher power influencing or kind of predetermining or kind of faithfully guiding him through these trials and tribulations that are more like corporeal, like, in concerning his body. But also, if I remember correctly, and again, this is not, I'm saying this is something rather tangential, but just might speak to his experience as somebody who almost like sees kind of enduring violence as a part of, the process of either growth or, competitiveness and things like that. If I'm not mistaken, I do think I remember him talking about how his father would physically punish him. Like hit him with a belt or things like that, and he wasn't saying this in the sense of in a negative connotation. He was basically saying, that's sort of how I was raised, and I kind of think these things, when you add them together, it's not an uncommon portrait for someone who has only known playing a sport that is by design incredibly violent, that is consistent upon, that is subsistent upon putting your body on the line and putting your body on the line for your teammates.
Yeah.
Like to basically at all costs sacrifice yourself in a way for your own kind of personal glory, but also the people on the field around you. I think it's just so anathema to a number of people in this sport.
I agree with you.
To think that I should step off the field for my personal health and to be there for my family when this is all behind me and I'm old and I have other things that I'm doing with my life because I can't play football till I'm 60 years old. You know, it's horrible. I mean,
we're watching. We know how this story ends, and we're watching it in real time.
and we've seen it, and we've not only seen it end in terms of football players with a guy like Junior Seau, who is completely destroyed in terms of his mental health and his and depression that led to him committing suicide, and how and his body and when they studied his brain, seeing how much the levels of CTE there. Aaron Hernandez being another example, and then also in the WWE, Chris Benoit, who his signature move in professional wrestling, which of course is orchestrated, but you are not hitting your head on somebody when your specialty move is going to the top turnbuckle of a very hard ring and slamming your head onto somebody's body hundreds of times a year. He then killed his wife and his son, and then killed himself.
I mean, there really is some eeriness when you bring up Junior Seau too, just like in terms of him also being a well-known Polynesian player. And you know what? I'm sure that for Tua, that has its own baggage and his own like weight to him in terms of what he wants to represent as a Polynesian player in the NFL. But the other thing is just like, I'm not hearing this mentioned anywhere, but the Dolphins are also culpable for this. Like, he had one season last year where he was able to play all the way through, but he had documented concussion issues prior to this. God, was it last year when he didn't get concussed, and it was the 2 years prior? I think so. They gave him basically a massive contract extension, knowing these risks. So you put on the table an incentive for this guy to go out there and continue to get his brains bashed in. And that's on Chris Greer, and it's on Stephen Ross.
And to an extent, Mike McDaniel. I mean...
and to an extent, Mike McDaniel.
Like...
I just gotta say, too, like, this is also why I hated this shit with Brian Flores. Like,
yeah.
I mean... This owner doesn't give a shit. This owner doesn't give a shit. And Tua sided with the owner and continued to help the owner smear the former coach, who is currently suing him for racial discrimination after Tua got a boatload of money. So this whole situation is just skeevy to me. And the Dolphins, I think, bear even more responsibility because they knew about his medical issues, and they still gave him that pile of money to keep playing. Where they could have said, hey, we'll franchise tag you, we'll see how it goes. We'll give you a short-term extension, or we won't extend you at all. And from a football perspective, you know how I feel. I don't feel that was the best use of their money. I feel like you could put a lot of quarterbacks in that system, and they would do really well. But that's not the situation that we have here. So.
And if anyone representing Tua, anyone in the negotiations could have also been like, listen,
totally his agent.
Listen, like, if we're gonna go forward with this type of deal, we need to have some sort of contingencies in place to make sure that you don't hurt yourself. But that you don't continually go out there and potentially risk your life.
But I'm sure Tua was like, I don't care.
And I think that's the thing too, is you listen to your client.
That's the thing is, yeah, I put that more on the Dolphins.
Yeah.
Because they're making an investment.
Right. They are. Yeah,
as opposed to trying to get paid.
Mm-hmm.
And they own capital. They own the team.
Right.
All right. After that cheery topic has ended.
Yes.
Why don't we go to our locks?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
ESVN.
Stone Cold Lock of the Century. All week.
Boom.
Yeah.
So we posted this on Twitter, but we did give our picks last week. If you were paying attention, I mean, sorry, with Bradley out, with all this stuff going on with the election, then I got sick. We weren't able to publicize it, but we both, luckily enough, did very well last week, although Bradley did better than I. At 3-0, Bradley went, and I went 2-1. So we both had the Lions plus 1.5. They ended up winning, beating the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. I had the Cincinnati Bengals -6 in Cleveland. They ended up only winning by 7, which made no sense because they dominated that entire game, but they kind of almost backdoor covered the Cleveland Browns. Bradley had the Houston Texans plus 2.5 in Green Bay. They lost only by 2, so you got that by a half point. And I, like an idiot, picked the Giants plus 3.5 at home against Philadelphia. I thought they would keep it close. They got blown out, and Daniel Jones looked like total shit. He can't get past his first read. And Bradley picked Kansas City plus 1.5 at San Francisco. That was a great pick. So I went 2-1. You went 3-0. How you feeling? We're both above 500 for the year.
I'm astonished, frankly, based off of being in Europe and just looking at the lines and not really, these games were going on while it's like 4 a.m.
Okay, well, you need to be taking more credit for when you don't just be like, I lucked into going 3-0.
I sort of did luck.
Okay, well, I guess I appreciate your intellectual honesty. This week, this is how I'm going. We actually have all different picks this week, so this should be fun. This Cleveland Browns line, 8.5 points with a new starting quarterback. I'm sorry, I just can't justify this. Like, I understand that the Ravens are probably the best team in the league right now, but they still do have some liabilities on defense, and Marlon Humphrey left that game. I'm not sure what his status is for week 8. But Marlon Humphrey left that game. They've still had some issues in the secondary. Deshaun Watson was the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. Okay? He is gone now. He tore his Achilles. Wah, wah. Now we have competent, potentially quarterback play.
I mean, truly anything above like somewhat replacement level, I think, even with the kind of mistakes that are baked into Jameis Winston's play just by virtue of how he's a gunslinger and stuff. He's still gonna big game hunt more than Jameis ever. I mean, more than Deshaun ever did.
And Nick Chubb is back, who is the real heart and soul of that team. I would not be surprised if the Browns, who still have that incredible defense that hasn't shown up, I get it, but they've also been exhausted because they are never off the field when Deshaun Watson is their starting quarterback.
They're never playing from ahead.
I could see them pulling off an upset here, but I do think they keep it close. Zay Flowers also turned his ankle last game.
Right.
The Ravens have been blowing people out. I think they could sleepwalk into this situation and just at least the Browns keep it close with a lift at quarterback, with a lift with Nick Chubb back, and with that defense deciding like, hey, let's show up here. And they are division rivals. Those games are always close. And also, the Browns, people don't realize this, but they take it seriously. The Ravens are the Browns, or who the Browns used to be. The Ravens moved to Baltimore, and the Cleveland Browns in this iteration are a different franchise. There are a lot of Cleveland fans that really hate that because obviously the ownership of the Ravens and their entire structure as an organization is far superior to what the Browns have put out there. So they could, unlike the Baltimore Ravens have 2 Super Bowl rings, 2 Super Bowl trophies. The Cleveland Browns fans feel that could have been theirs, and I think the players take that to heart. So give me Cleveland plus 8.5 at home. That is a massive line for the reasons I describe. Bradley, you have Thursday Night Football, and I almost took this too, but I got a little scared away by Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, because the Vikings only really lost a real nail biter in Detroit, so I think I'm still pretty bullish on the Vikings generally, and I just think I always admire how Stafford, comports himself even in the face of this incredible attrition that they're going through on their roster. But just even the fact that trade rumors are swirling around both Stafford and Cooper Kupp, which seems to be a little unnecessary to me, but
Stafford being traded to the Vikings.
To the Vikings,
I don't know why they would do that. Just keep riding.
No, it doesn't seem wise. I don't think until I don't see any reason for that, and it might just be honestly scuttlebutt for scuttlebutt's sake. But I think the Vikings can bounce back here even at in SoFi, just because SoFi's not really a home stadium to begin with.
There aren't probably be more Vikings fans
there aren't really that many dyed-in-the-wool Rams fans to begin with, so I don't think it's a huge advantage. And I'm thinking they can bounce back in a big way after a really close, hard-fought interdivisional matchup, which they absolutely could have won.
100% they could have won that. And they started, and then they let the Lions come back into it. That's a little bit the Vikings, if they have an Achilles heel right now, is that they go into slumps and they take their foot off the gas during certain periods of the game. And they were undefeated until last game.
Right.
This was the first time a team was talented enough to take them up on it. So I agree with you. I think the Vikings win. The Rams just scare me because
they can always do something. I mean, there's always a rabbit in the hat for.
I mean, Baltimore could blow out Cleveland, and I could be totally wrong. But also the other side of the coin in terms of this is just like Kevin O'Connell came from McVay's system. So who has the edge there? That's
Right.
the one question.
And it's sort of a sensei and pupil.
Right. Right. But, there's so many of those guys around the league now that
Right.
it's like, what?
It's true.
It's
Everyone
just-
sort of has their own wrinkle now.
It evens out.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of these Shanahan, McVay acolytes are like half the league at this point. So Green Bay in Jacksonville, -3.5. I was pretty surprised to see this line this small. I think the Packers are one of the best teams in the NFL. They weathered that storm without Jordan Love with a lot of, honestly, they better than I thought that they could. Jordan Love's been throwing a lot of interceptions. He's a little bit more Brett Favre than Aaron Rodgers at this point, but I don't think that's the worst thing. I like teams that take risks and try to push the ball down the field. But the problem for the Jaguars is that their defense is maybe the worst in the NFL. I think by metrics, they're in the bottom 5 in every category. Ryan Nielsen, with his stupid mustache, is so bad. Like, can't get pressure, can't cover, and
with who they have, it's like kind of shocking. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
with Josh Hines Allen, Eric Armstead, Tyson Campbell at corner. I guess has he been playing though?
he, I think, just came off IR.
Oh, okay,
but
got it.
don't quote me on that. Love has been, as I
Travon
mentioned,
Walker. Like, I just feel like they have
Josh
enough,
Allen.
Right, they have enough talent. I feel like to actually be somewhat impactful, and yet like they are just so unintimidating on defense.
I really think that they only beat the Patriots last week because the Patriots are so bad, and largely
Right.
the Jaguars have given up. And so they're coming back off a 2-week trip to London. I just don't see the Jaguars winning this game. I think Doug Peterson is on the hottest seat that is left in the
Agreed.
NFL.
Yep.
And so this could be a blowout where Doug Peterson ends up getting fired at the end of this. I think, like, you can see that the team has largely quit. They're going to begin to sell. Travis Etienne could be on the trade block. I know that Brian Thomas Jr. looks really good, but
No, I feel good about Tank Bigsby and Brian Thomas Jr. But
Me too.
But I also think for the most part, that's two young pieces on a team that seemingly is just kind of spinning its wheels.
And I just think that the Packers turn up their defensive intensity and get a turnover or two on Trevor Lawrence, and they win this game by like 10 points.
That's
my
always been
prediction.
one of his Achilles' heels too. Is the ball security for
Yeah.
Trevor? Honestly,
And I
not
just,
even interceptions, fumbles.
There's just such a coaching discrepancy on
I
both sides
agreed,
of the ball and a talent discrepancy. So
And the Packers just gutted out a great win against the Texans too.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think they're feeling confident. They're finding their groove, and they understand the entire NFC North understands the implications of every game that they're in because it has rapidly become the best division in football. Every team is above 500. Every team is good. In my book, every team is a playoff team if things were to work out in that manner. So I'm going with the Packers -3.5 in Jacksonville. Bradley, you're up next with the Seattle Seahawks at home against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, obviously, I think there is some potential for this to backfire just because I actually think Amari Cooper is only going to look better and better in this Bills offense. So we'll
Right.
see. But I actually think the Seattle home field advantage is kind of real.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think even though they lost last week. Actually, did they lose last
No,
week?
they
Oh, they
beat
beat
the
the Falcons, right?
yeah.
Okay, so
yeah.
yes.
They blew them out.
I thought Gino looked amazing, honestly. I thought Gino looked incredible. I thought the team's offense looked really, really solid. And I as much
Kenneth
as
Walker's a star.
as much as I think that the Bills defense has been really playing out of ahead of its station a little bit, they are still missing the people that they're missing. So I think if I like the offensive scheme that Ryan Grubb has been cooking up in Seattle, and I trust Geno Smith a lot, and I trust what he's able to do with the skill position players he has. And what I think is what I really like about Geno in the way that I'm saying almost it's so much different just because he's such a better player, but I appreciate Geno's gunslinger mentality because it coincides with his incredible accuracy and touch on the ball. I mean, he'll throw bombs that are like pinpoint accurate.
Yes.
So my thinking is, the spine of this Bills defense is probably the vulnerability there, the linebacking core and the safety core. I think Geno can kind of potentially pick those guys apart.
Yeah. Yeah. This one scares me. But I do think Seattle being home dogs gives. I see your thinking on that front. We'll
But then,
see.
on the other hand, Josh Allen can just become, Magneto and just
He
basically
could. Yeah. 100%.
Carve these guys
and
up.
they've struggled with their run defense up there in
Yes,
Seattle.
that's
so
true. Yep.
I do think they can run the ball on Buffalo. So I'm going with, I saw this line and I didn't think twice. I really have no other explanation except that I just think Mike McCarthy versus Kyle Shanahan.
The Cowboys have not even found bottom yet. There is no bottom.
The Cowboys do they really think they can beat the Niners this time? I mean, it's been
After the 47-9 game? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and then also the past 2 years under Mike McCarthy, their humiliating playoff losses to Kyle Shanahan.
Yes, getting roundly embarrassed on the biggest stages. Yeah,
And
I
look,
don't think so.
The Niners defense is not what it once was. I think that's part of the problem
And
here.
obviously the attrition for the wide receiver core as well.
And Ayuk is out for the year. I mean, horrible injury. Glad he got paid prior to tearing both his ACL and MCL, it appears. But they don't miss a beat with Juwan Jennings slotting in at wide receiver too. And even without, if Debo is banged up, I know he's in the hospital. My God, I hope he's
believe
okay.
he was discharged, I think, or something. I think
mean,
he is
but
feeling.
with
It was like
fluid in the lungs. I'm not banking on it.
It was like pneumonia.
Yeah.
Symptoms, that type of thing, yeah.
Poor guy.
But I will say what's kind of amazing is, I think when they drafted Ricky Pearsall, who thankfully saw the field is okay after surviving a horrific shooting,
Right.
that actually very mercifully and luckily, I think was sort of one of those wounds that went right out of him, so it didn't hit any organs or anything. He played last week, and obviously, I'm sure he'll be seeing a bit of a bigger role with the skill position injuries. At the time, I was almost like, this seems like a luxury pick and almost maybe not necessarily a need. But look at this. There's a little bit of there's some real attrition, and now they can actually slot a guy they picked in the first round to see what they have in him. So I mean, I do usually trust kind of the scheme to sort of lift some of these guys up. Still,
Yeah, I mean, I will say that when they did take Pearsall, they didn't know if they were going to get an extension done with Ayuk. I mean, he didn't get that done until right before training camp. So, at the end of the day, I don't trust Mike McCarthy. I don't trust that Cowboys defense. I trust Kyle Shanahan, and that's about it. Bradley. Oh, so by the way, Niners at home -3.5 on Sunday Night Football.
And so I initially, funnily enough, because again, this is how much I'm kind of patching my. It's like Memento. I'm like trying to look for clues about what happened in this last week of NFL action. I didn't realize Jaden Daniels wasn't starting, so I initially was going to take the Commanders +3. But now that I know I'm taking the Bears -3, it's really a huge bummer that we weren't able to get the number 1 versus number 3.
It's unclear right now, I think, but I would guess he is not number 2.
Number 2, so it was number 1 versus number 2.
Overall pick.
Playing
but I
each
would
other.
guess that he's not going to play.
Probably not going to play. So it would be more Caleb Williams versus Marcus Mariota. In that instance, I definitely think it makes more sense to take the Bears.
Yeah.
I feel like they're actually, as we were sort of saying, I actually think Caleb Williams is sort of breaking the Shane Waldron mold, and even in spite of maybe not the most creative offense, I think they're really starting to shine this Bears offense, and
Finally
also
getting DJ Moore involved. And all right, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
go
taking over
ahead.
your pick, but this is I have been on the Cole Kmet bandwagon.
Oh yes,
For years. I've been saying he's way more talented than what they do with him. He can block. He can catch passes. He can be explosive. Finally, they're getting him involved. Thank God. Thank God Shane Waldron figured out that he was better than, 45-year-old Gerald Everett.
And also,
so much appreciated.
And with Kmet, it's give your rookie quarterback a big, fast target.
I felt he's been underutilized for his entire time with the Bears, so I'm happy to see.
And so, and to top it all off, I almost think with how Caleb and them have been and the offense has been playing, it's almost matching the talent of the defense. The Bears defense has still been really, really solid. So I think the combination of Daniels potentially not playing, or if he does play, obviously playing a little hurt, with definitely, I think the Bears having the clear advantage on offense against a kind of pretty low end personnel Commanders defense, who they play hard, but it's just they don't have that many players outside of Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne.
Yeah.
To really
and their secondary is shitty.
Exactly. I like Mikey Sanders still, but he's a rookie. Dorrance Armstrong is a little banged up, so even their pass rush is even a little bit more neutralized than it already is. So I just think this would be much easier for me to want to kind of pick the Commanders if Daniels was playing. But it definitely, if it's even a consideration, I have to take Caleb and the Bears.
All right. Well, that is what we have, folks. So I am 10-9-2. Bradley is 11-10. No pushes, although he rode pushes last year. I am the push queen. I'm a pusher, Katie. I'm going with.
This is what I do.
Yeah.
I'm a pusher, Katie.
I'm a pusher. I'm going with the Browns plus 8.5 at home against the incredible Ravens, but I think that the Browns keep it close. I'm also going with the Green Bay Packers in Jacksonville minus 3.5, and the San Francisco 49ers at home against Dallas minus 3.5. Bradley's going with the Thursday Night Football crew, Minnesota Vikings minus 2.5, the Seattle Seahawks against the Bills at home plus 3, and the Chicago Bears in Chicago minus 3. We will see who is on top at the end of this week. And we have a suggestion for our friend Kowalski from our friend Kowalski in Nebraska. Have you guys settled on a punishment?
No, not this year. I don't think we haven't.
We
thought
have
about
not.
It
For whoever loses this season's predictions. If not, I have an idea, and once again, I will finance it. Well, Bradley, I don't know. I mean, last year was pretty disgusting. You had to face the brunt of the sodas, although I still maintain that my cheese pick was worse.
Kowalski wanted to send us Rocky Mountain oysters.
I know that's not acceptable if that's what you want.
I think it's a bridge
this
too
year.
far, and also I shudder to think how those would be transported.
I shudder to think about it as well. And also, Kowalski, you've been to the studio. Do you know that we have like one mini fridge?
Yeah, it's not. We don't have a lot of storage.
It is not.
Especially cold storage.
No cold storage. We don't even have a dishwasher anymore, which is the sad thing. It was a desktop dishwasher. Mm-hmm. It was my friend.
R.I.P.
R.I.P.
We still think about it.
I think about it every day.
It's so hard to say goodbye to
when
yesterday.
I have to hand wash my.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, all right. So Kowalski says it won't be that. All right. Well, but I don't want blue cheese soda. No. He keeps. Why don't you send me a DM, Kowalski, with your idea? We'll think about it. How about this? This is how I'm a YouTuber. Post below. Comment below.
Sound off in the comments about what our punishment should be.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Let us know in the comments down below, and don't hesitate to interact with each other.
I'm gonna go to a soundproof room with no windows for 40 days.
Ooh, that cough. Kowalski, why don't you comment below? Let us know. We'll read some of my M's and then we'll get out of here. Emma's honors thesis says, oh God, I can't believe I said that. And it's in that song. It's because I said it to Michael on TMBS. It's been 15 years since the Yankees reached the World Series. I'm excited. Yes. I mean, look, it would be fun for New York to have a parade. I have my friend Kyle, who doesn't care about sports at all, just cares about the parade. He was like, okay, so will there be a parade? He asked me before every Giants season, will there be a parade this year? I say, no, Kyle, they're horrible. As I told you last year, there's no parade. Oh, okay. But maybe there will be a parade for him with the Yankees. That's the one thing that, and I guess there was the Liberty Parade today, but,
yeah, it would be our second parade in New York.
It would be our second parade. I mean, love him to death. He just wants an excuse to day drink in the city, but understandable. Brandon from Kentucky. Picks look good this week. Do you guys think Ravens Browns goes over 44.5 points? Also, Danica Patrick gave her reason for voting for Trump on Fox News this week. Talked about Trump being the rational pick, and there's a divide between men and women are voting, and she claims it's just because of Trump's personality.
She did say this was the first time she's ever voted.
Oh, cool. Well, there's a really interesting article that Ettinger meant to my friend. I mean, this is not this is not Majority Report, but he wrote for his Substack, which you should subscribe to, which talks about how honestly the Trumpism without Trump candidates are performing much more poorly than Trump himself. And so all of these things about perceived weaknesses about him are a lot of liberal wish casting, like all of this stuff about his indictments and everything. It turns out that his weirdness and the force of his personality is actually overperforming the politics that he espouses. And I do think that there needs to be people that reckon with that. And people just think he's funny. And that's kind of all it comes down to.
But about the points?
Oh,
probably,
yeah.
Yeah, 44. That's not that many.
But I have the over disease, so don't bet money on what we say. I do think that's kind of low for a Ravens game, though, because the Ravens defense is not what it once was. Kowalski from Nebraska, ESVN, takes long drag of a cigarette. I haven't heard that name in years. Well, we're back, baby. Schittsburg Squealers. This isn't going to help Mahomes with the interceptions he keeps throwing right to the defense. Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. We'll see. He needs somebody he can trust. Tater Tot, pain is weakness leaving the body or some BS like that. I'm assuming that's about Tua. Butterdog, Emma, you think the guy with repetitive brain injuries might be kind of dumb? How could you be so bold? I mean, I think he's dumber than most football players. Like, I mean, just some of the stuff he said, I don't want to... You know how I feel about him as a player, and I don't know if I would like him as a devout evangelical Trump supporter as a person either, to be honest with you. Tater Tot, short week for the Vikes, and Cooper is coming back. Rams got this. We'll see. I mean, Cooper could be showing off for other teams. NJ Mammon, how come you guys never talk about how great the Steelers' defense is or how much better the team is? Rodgers didn't lose the game in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh won it. It's annoying. I just disagree, NJ Mailman, with that assessment. I think that there was actually a ton of opportunities for the Jets to win that game. They were up, 14-6? And Rodgers fucked up. Like, they had the game in their control. So I don't think that... I don't think it really is the Steelers' defense. I think the Steelers' defense is good. I think they're well coached, as they always are, and they've got a few studs. But this is not... The Steelers' defense is top 10 in the NFL. But there are a bunch of defenses I think are more dominant. Like, I think the Chiefs' defense is more dominant. I think the Giants have a better front. I don't want to go through this exercise. We can do this another time, but
It's also becoming less and less of an achievement to beat the Jets, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to tell you that. But yeah, the Steelers are always well coached, but I do think that when you look at some of like the missed throws and opportunities, it really falls on Rodgers more than anything. But I do like the Steelers. I just think, they're a little bit of, they're a team with a ceiling in my view. I don't think they're going to the AFC Championship or to the Super Bowl. All right, guys, final IM of the day. Christo, punishment, listen in full to Tim Pool's band lap. All right, actual final IM of the day. Tom Lowe Fink, happy Thursday. Welcome back. I'm glad you're feeling better. In rugby, Wales have named their squad for the upcoming men's ends of the year international games. I have mixed feelings about our upcoming schedule. Also, regarding a concussion, World Rugby is being sued by several former professional players for failing to protect players from the effects of repeated head injuries. One of the plaintiffs, Steve Thompson, won the 2003 Men's Rugby World Cup with England, but can't remember it. Wow, that's awful. Tom, thank you, our rugby correspondent, for keeping us updated. Appreciate you all. We will see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.
Bye.